Hello everyone, Simon here. We are playing Minecraft and we are continuing our Peninsular city build. Um, so today we have to chop wood. We're gonna have to chop a lot of wood, and then we're gonna use the wood to fill in some of the ground behind the wall, the boundary wall. So I don't know how much wood I'll need, but the good thing about wood is that every log turns into 4 planks. So you don't need that many logs because you need like the planks will you get 4 times as many blocks as you chop. Is what I'm trying to say. So I've been thinking about this, right? So why don't we put saplings like there? Because sometimes the trees grow a little bit taller than you can reach, right? So if we put the trees in the ground like this, like wouldn't that make them easier to harvest? Because then they'll be like 1 block lower. The question is, of course, whether trees will grow when they're put in the ground like this. So I guess we'll find out soon enough whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. Might end up being a bad idea. I think the spruce trees need to be spaced that far apart for them to grow, I think. Alright, let me just put some trees there. It's not really enough, is it? Let me just put some more trees. If you have enough saplings, right, you get to a point where the saplings grow faster than you can chop them down just because there's so many of them. And then you have infinite harvesting. You don't have to worry about waiting for them to grow. So let me just put all this stuff down. Put all the saplings into little holes in the ground. And then we'll go chop trees somewhere else. See how this works out for us. So we do want to chop all the stuff over there because we're gonna have to fill in a lot of this. So let's push this back. So if for those of you who are not that familiar with the architectural history, so you know Venice, Venice in Italy. Venice is the city that's built in a lagoon, and so the city is built on a few islands in the lagoon. And the way Venice was built is that because the ground, like in the lagoon, the ground is just mud, basically. And it's not easy to build palaces on mud, especially stone palaces, which is what they eventually ended up with. And what they did is they put logs, like they drove logs into the mud, and then they put their buildings on top of the logs. So it's like timber piles for foundation. So if you like imagine you chop a tree, and then you just kind of drop the entire tree into the mud, and you put the building on top of the trees. So then the trees provide enough stability in the mud for the stone palaces not to sink into the mud and then sink into the water, which would be embarrassing if your palace just kind of sunk into the mud. And so, and the trees are there today, like they're still underneath all the stone palaces. And because the mud is mud, the trees don't decay, or they decay very slowly because there's no oxygen, because everything is in the mud and encased in the mud. The trees, I mean, eventually they'll just become fossilized because they don't decay, because there's no oxygen for the bacteria to eat the trees. So the trees are, for the most part, stable. Although, not entirely stable, but they're stable enough that the island has, or the city of Venice has remained mostly intact. Although now with sea level rise and climate change, the sea is rising, and so Venice is at risk of being drowned. But that's a different problem. That's not a problem with the trees, right? That's a problem with climate change and rising sea levels. So that's how they did it. So like underneath the city of Venice, there's just a whole lot of fossilized trees, or like they're not quite fossilized yet, but they will be eventually. Fossilized trees holding up all the palazzos. Italian for palace is palazzo. So it's kind of similar to what we're doing here, except that we're not using entire logs. We just because in Minecraft you get 4 times as many planks as you get logs for some magical reason. I don't know why. Like this, like one of these turned into 4. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, in Minecraft, the magic of Minecraft is that you get 4 times as many planks as you get logs. So we're going to use planks. We're not going to put logs in the ground. We're going to do a similar thing where we kind of bury the wood planks under the ground, and that will provide foundations for us. Have any of these trees grown? Maybe they can't grow like that. Maybe they can't grow when they're underground like that. So some saplings can't grow. Like there are certain, I don't know, there are certain requirements for saplings to grow. I should probably look it up. Let me just look it up just in case I'm doing something stupid. Tree. I am in the Minecraft wiki. Trees growth. Jungle tree would not grow because of the red wool block growth. Tree saplings on a dirt must have a light level of 8 in the sapling block. Sapling will uproot light level 7 or less unless you can see the sky. Sapling must have at least 4 blocks of space above it. The amount of space varies between different species of trees. If there's a ceiling above the sapling, this will limit the maximum height of the tree. Okay, how much space do you need? Oak tree, and we don't... Spruce tree. 1 by 1 spruce trees require a 5 by 5 column of unobstructed space at least 7 blocks above the sapling to grow. No horizontal clearance is needed at the base of the tree and 1 level above. A sapling planted in a hole 2 blocks deep will still grow. Okay, so according to the wiki, this will grow. Oh, I don't want to grow. As I was reading, this is grown. Alright, so up to 2 blocks deep, it will grow. But then above that, we need space above for the tree to grow. Right. And this tree is really short. It's only 4 blocks tall. So the idea is that some of the taller spruce trees will stay within reach if we like plant them in a hole, right? So this one, for example, 4, 5. So even if the tree is 1 block taller than that, it will still be reachable without, pillaring or laddering or staircasing our way up to it. Alright, there we go. That's cool. This seems like a good idea. I mean, it's kind of weird. It's like Minecraft logic, right? You plant trees in holes. But there you go, Minecraft logic. Let me chop these trees, though, because we do need to clear this out. Like all of those down there needs to be cleared out. Hey, chicken, I'll take your eggs. So there's not much else for us to say, is there? I mean, we're just chopping trees. Oh, wait a minute, I don't want to do that. I don't know how much wood we'll need. It's difficult to get an estimate, right? But although like each stack turns into 4 stacks. So like 5 stacks of logs will give us 20 stacks of planks. Which, sounds like a lot, but because of the scale at which we are building things, might not actually be enough. Alright, so I guess everything underneath the height of the wall needs to go. I don't think any of the trees you plant will end up as tall as some of these naturally generated ones. Like this one is really tall. Alright, there's that. So like here it's quite low down, right? So now we have to like fill all of that in up to there. And the thing is we're moving the dirt up as well, so we need to dig the dirt out. At least enough dirt for one layer of ground, and then fill in, and then put the dirt back on top. So it's kind of complicated what we're trying to do. Let me try to stay sapling positive. So we go back and pick up the saplings that we're dropping behind us. So now we got almost 2 stacks. Which is not enough. I mean, there is the option of just leaving the ground underneath hollow. Not a big fan of doing that. Because as we build our structure and our city, we might dig into the ground a little bit and like have basements and stuff like that and foundations. And then there's like holes to deal with. And also it's just weird having a hole in the ground. It's it just feels wrong. Like holes in buildings, it happens in real life, which is in a okay. I guess I should explain. Um, sometimes construction workers, if they're not sufficiently supervised, they will cheat, and they won't because like construction, and then people like thieves exist, and sometimes people steal things. And one of the ways you can steal from construction sites is you use less material than the engineer has specified, and then you just take the excess and sell it, and then you steal basically from your clients from their construction site. So, for example, with like concrete buildings, you might use less cement and more aggregate because cement is more expensive than aggregate. So when you mix your concrete, you put in less cement than you're supposed to, put in more aggregate than you're supposed to. But when you do that, it makes the concrete more brittle and weaker because this like the cement is the stuff that holds the aggregate together. So you need the right mix of cement and aggregate for the concrete to stick together properly. So if you use more aggregate, which is just stone and bits of whatever it is, bits of bricks and stone and whatnot. If you use more aggregate and less cement, then the concrete is more likely to crumble and fall apart, which is kind of disastrous if Wasn't there a wolf here? Didn't I push a wolf down here at some point? Did it drown itself? Is it how big is that pool? I don't even know. Yeah, so they do that and then they steal they take the cement that wasn't used because they use more aggregate instead, and then they just sell the cement in their own time somewhere else, and they steal the money that way. And then other things they might do is like they might just put rubbish into the cement. So like you're pouring a cement foundation or a wall or something, and they just throw their rubbish into it. Like if they have just had a log fall into the pool. Like if they have lunch, they'll just kind of put the packaging. They just throw the packaging in the rubbish, like the cans and polystyrene boxes and whatever it is, and they just chuck rubbish in there. And this stuff would take up space, right? So if you put a can in your concrete wall, the can takes up space. I think the dog drowned itself down here. The can takes up space, and so then less cement or less concrete goes into the wall because some of it has been taken up by the can and the polystyrene and the paper boxes and the plastic wrapping and whatever it is. And so then, and also you don't have to bother, cleaning up your rubbish because you just chucked it into the concrete. so you're kind of being lazy on both sides. Like you're reducing the amount of concrete you use, and you're also not having to clean up your lunch wrapping rubbish from the construction site. But the problem, of course, is when you put like plastic wrappings and tin cans and things like that into your concrete becomes weaker because it's not stuck together properly. Like you have a piece of plastic in the middle of it. Like the piece of plastic doesn't stick to the concrete properly, and so then the concrete is just weaker, right? It's more likely to fall apart when there's an earthquake or when there's like a hurricane. The hurricane pushes on your building a little bit, and it's more likely to fall apart. So stuff like that happens, and you usually don't find out about this stuff until many years later, when there is an earthquake or something. The thing is, like buildings are usually over-engineered by about 30%. I think at least 30%. So the engineering margin is usually about 30% if I remember right. Which means that like if for example you need 10 columns to hold up the next floor, the design will put in 13 columns. Because you don't want it to be you don't want anything to be just strong enough. You want things to be a little bit stronger than that, or substantially stronger than that, so that there's a margin of error, so that your building doesn't fall down if you miscalculate a little bit, or if there's some sort of defect, or if you make a mistake somewhere, it doesn't just fall apart immediately. So everything's over-engineered by 30%, and so these tin cans and rubbish and using more aggregate. So stuff like this, if you don't exceed the 30%, that's already been over-engineered into the design, then the building will still stand up. The building will still stand up, and you won't really notice there's anything wrong with the building. Except, when there's a hurricane, and the thing in the building, the whole building falls down, and then you look at where the columns broke, and you find tin cans in it, and you're like, what is this? And of course, the reason the building falls apart then is because of those tin cans in the columns. And it's like, well, of course, the column's not as strong as it's supposed to be because there's tin cans inside of it. But by then, usually the construction guys are long gone. You can't find them anymore. The business is closed, and all the money is gone. All the money is gone. All the people are gone, and you're left with a building that is not quite strong enough to stand up in a hurricane. So stuff like this happens unless you keep a very close eye on your construction workers. I mean, not everyone's a thief, of course. But you only need one or two thieves to ruin your building. So you just need to be really vigilant and keep an eye on your construction workers. And so when we talk about, well, why do you need to fill in the ground? Why don't you just, put a layer of dirt on top and leave a hole at the bottom? That's what it reminds me of. Even though Minecraft logic is not the same as real world logic. See, when you suggest to me, well, just leave the hole in the ground, like nobody's gonna notice. That's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of these thieves on construction sites who don't build the thing properly, and then they steal the extra materials, and then they leave holes in the walls. And then when there's an earthquake, the building collapses and hundreds of people die because they stole part of the wall away. That's what that reminds me of. And of course, I am against that sort of shenanigans because people literally die when you do things like that. Alright, well, there's architecture story time for you. So if you're wondering why... And again, I do realize that Minecraft logic is not the same as real world logic. Like, there's no earthquakes, there's no hurricanes in Minecraft, and even if there were, no one's gonna die because I left some holes in the ground. But like in the real world, if you do something like that, then eventually there's gonna be an earthquake and the building is gonna fall into the hole, and then people are like, well, what the hell happened here? Who was the architect responsible? And why is my building inside the ground now? That's the kind of thing that people will ask in real life. And we don't do that sort of thing, right? We're professionals. We don't do that sort of thing. And like insufficient foundations as well is kind of funny. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is the best example of insufficient foundations. Like the whole tower is like slowly falling down, although it's not falling down anymore. But the foundations were basically not enough to hold up the weight of the building, and so the building just started tipping over slowly, slowly tipping over. And that's why the Leaning Tower of Pisa is leaning. And it was already leaning when it was under construction. And that's the funny thing, right? It was under construction, it was already leaning. But they just kept building. They didn't stop, they didn't fix it, they just kept building. And so the building just continued to lean more and more. Like they didn't stop. Like they were halfway up. The building was leaning, they didn't stop, pull it down, fix the foundations, and then continue. No, they just finished it. They just kept building upwards, and they finished it, even though it was already obviously falling down. So that's sort of like shenanigans. I guess it's pretty funny in hindsight, but you have to think of them as architecture failures, right? Like they're failures in architecture, and you shouldn't have stuff like that happen if you do your job properly. So that's it's not. Like, it's funny in hindsight, but it's not really correct.